All right, hello everyone. It's such a fantastic evening. I just want to say a very big thank you for everyone joining in. I can see a lot of people already waiting. I'm already having comments in the comment section. I'm pretty excited. It's an amazing time, an amazing evening. You could be anywhere. Obviously, it's a Saturday, so there are lots of events going on. There are parties, one bed, and the likes. Greetings to you from Lagos, Nigeria, and I just want to say thank you very much, everyone, for being here. And this is going to be a very interesting evening, very interesting one, I must say, because first of all, we are going to be talking about something that's very important. You cannot even, ignore the fact that we have come to a point in history where we have to make history, if I put it in that context. So, greetings, everyone, from, of course, every continent. You're welcome from every country. Just want to say thank you for being here. If you're seeing this right now, we are actually live on LinkedIn and we are actually live on YouTube. So whatever works for you, if you know that you're, of course, not so comfortable being on LinkedIn to watch this, you can easily head on to YouTube and, of course, you'll be able to join in. So it's such a fantastic, I see a lot of comments. I see Ceci saying, waiting for showtime, it's already showtime. Mayor, thank you for being here. You said it's great to be here. It's so good to actually see the comments. So we're just going to use this 30-second opportunity. Introduce yourself in the comment section. What's your name? What do you do? Of course, this is not just a webinar for lawyers. So we have startup founders in the room. We have tech enthusiasts in the room. We have software developers in the room. We have policymakers in the room. So just know that it's going to be quite an interesting session. Our speaker is here and is ready. And when I say ready, like he's really ready for us. I can see him smiling in the background. I see Victoria. Good evening, Victoria. Good evening, Joel Adeyemi. It's such a pleasure. So please do well to send this link and send this invite to just put it on your WhatsApp stories, put it on all your social media platforms. We're going to have so much fun tonight. So thank you very much once again. My name is Rosemont Phil-Othihiwa. I'm happy to announce, and the quote LinkedIn lingo will say, I am very excited to announce that this is my first LinkedIn Live, and I am very happy that I finally got to do this. I've had a couple of friends who are saying, hey, you speak so well, why don't you do something? Why don't we get to see more of you? But yeah, this is not about me today. So I just want to say thank you for being here again. Like I earlier mentioned, my name is Rosemont Phil-Othihiwa, and I'm a corporate commercial attorney. Of course, we're going to talk about my profile later, but I am privileged to be the host of the Startup Compliance series. The goal, and I would say the goal of this series basically is to bring a lot of enlightenment to business owners and startups on the need for proper structure, proper systems, being able to navigate a system that works. It's very important. And with some of the news that has been flying around over the past couple of weeks, you cannot but pay critical attention to that sector, because as much as it's a very interesting sector, it's in technology, you realize that if you don't do things properly, things can go bad very fast. A friend of mine gives the analogy of when you build something and you're trying to expand and grow it, and something, technology is an enabler as far as I'm concerned. So whatever it is that we are doing or building, either as business owners or as entrepreneurs or as startup founders or as software developers, whatever it is, right? Once you infuse it with tech, what you have done is that you've given that product and that solution the capacity to scale. And scaling beyond your domestic ecosystem or climate simply means that you are going to be exposed to several other ecosystems. So if you're trying to scale into a new country, you have to deal with the economy or the regulations of that country. So the reason why this series was birthed, before I bring on my speaker who is anticipating and waiting in the background, is that we want to throw some light, right? As legal practitioners, as lawyers, as tech enthusiasts, as people passionate about the corporate governance structure and compliance and regulatory system, we actually want to throw some light into this and literally bring a lot of clarity. Because as a lawyer and as a startup founder, as a startup business advisor and all that, I have encountered a lot of business owners who tell you that let's just go to market first. We can always handle compliance later. We can always do this later. But you realize that it's something that you can no longer overlook, right? So there's a lot of innovations. This series is going to be holding twice every month. So you can always expect to have experts coming in to talk about different areas. So today we're going to be talking about startup trends in 2023. Of course, 2023 just started. So in your mind, you'll be like, this topic said, what has happened that you're bringing? You're talking about trends in 2023. But trust me, as the series starts, you'll be able to understand why. Startups, of course, startup innovations and startup trends in 2023. What should startup owners pay attention to? So it's basically an attempt to bring a lot of education in that space. All right, I've spent 6 minutes of my time already. So without any further ado, I'm going to be bringing on board, of course, none other. We have an amazing gentleman in our midst. I remember when I recall, like I said, I hope you have your glass of wine, you have juice, I have water, right? I remember when I encountered him, I think I will use the word, he writes so beautifully and so educationally, there's a word like that, right? And I was like, this is somebody that I think I should pay attention to. And of course, the first thing that came to my mind is, who can I speak to on this matter? And I know he's very passionate about the regulatory compliance space, right? Whenever things happen, he always has something very valuable to add. Of course, some of you remember one of his trends and one of his posts that really, really caught on, had a massive viewing and over 500 and counting engagement, talking about how, as lawyers or as professionals, we are actually supposed to build and not be in a hurry. That post really spoke to me, but that's not why he's here today. He's actually going to be speaking to the topic of tonight. So let's see more engagement on the group. I can see a lot of comments, but before I do that, let me just share his profile. Yes, so I'm going to be reading his profile, and I'm sure it's going to be a no-brainer. So Oyin Dolapo Olushesi is the lead legal services at Cora, which is a Pan-African payments company that enables local and global businesses to sell, build, and scale with startups across Africa with bespoke payment solutions. He has extensive background working with startups across Africa, Europe, and North America on issues related to regulatory compliance, data protection, licensing, corporate governance, and general startup advisory. Besides law, Oyin Dolapo has a keen interest in writing, teaching, and playing drums, right? And I'm really excited that bringing Oyin Dolapo here. He's with us right now. Hi, Oyin. How are you?
I'm all right, Rosemont. Hi everyone. Good evening. Good to be here.
See me, I need to stop smiling for a bit. I'm blushing from ear to ear.
By
Just
the way,
having you here, please.
I hope everyone has their notes because I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of wisdom that Rosemont is going to be dishing out to us. So I have my pen. I hope
Definitely.
you can say.
See, I don't understand this thing about lawyers whining lawyers. Please, you have to be careful. So I see Adeola's comment. You're welcome. Adeola Kolawole. Please let's put some comments in the comment box. I can see it. We are definitely going to recognize you. So introduce yourself. Let me someone. I see Comfort Adekunle. You're welcome. I see Michael Ime. You are very, very welcome. So straight to it, right? I want to ask a question. What was the first thing that came to your mind when you saw my request, and of course you saw the topic that was proposed? I'm quite curious actually. So what was the first thing that you actually thought about?
I think it was in the morning. Can't really recall. The first thing that crossed my mind was so interestingly. I was thinking along similar lines, right? I had just been thinking about how I've spoken with a few of my friends and colleagues, and the idea is that this year there's going to be a lot of upsetting events. I think I even wrote about it sometime. I anticipate that there's going to be a lot of upsetting events, and it's not just me, right? The experts also sort of like project the same thing. So in my mind, I've been thinking about how to better help the ecosystem or to provide my own little assistance to the ecosystem. So I was thinking along this line. So when you message me that, I was like, they say when you're thinking about something and the prophet comes in, like it's like a validation of that your thoughts. So the moment you message me, I was like, okay, this is no good. I just have to drop it. And I was curious as to why. I know there are a lot of amazing and brilliant people that are within your connection, because I was wondering, me, this small boy in in Lagos, but it's amazing to be here. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of fun and things to learn.
Awesome, awesome. So thank you very much. We're going to go straight to it, right? I know, right? The universe knows how to bring ideas together. I think it's a very interesting thing. We're going to hit with the first question. There's been a lot of conversation, ranging from at first it started with everybody being super excited. Oh, if I have an idea, the moon is the beginning, not even the limit. And there's been a lot of growth, there's been a lot of challenges, there's been a lot of innovations, there's been a lot of regulatory clampdowns in the startup space, right? So let's talk a little bit about the work you do in a minute, right? For the proper talks about the fact that you help in compliance across different regulatory landscapes, right? I understand how what that means. That means that you're literally having to do with several regulators, sometimes simultaneously, across similar systems as well. So, can you share with me some practical experiences that you've had in this particular space, and what's been your experience like, really?
Yeah. So the interesting thing about what we do is that you have to. There is always something coming up, and then you have to provide almost immediate solutions to things, because you really don't have time to like. A lot of us were aware of some of the issues that some fintech companies had last year, right, in Kenya. That's just like an example of some of the things that happen every now and then. But I think that for me, what is particularly interesting, especially with interfacing with regulators, is that many of the things that you are going to be doing, you have to bootstrap them, right? Many of the things that you are going to be doing, you have to learn on your feet, right? There are a lot of, I don't want to use the word misinterpretation, but there are a lot of innovative interpretations that you have to be able to existing regulations, right? So that is the most interesting thing for me about what I do. And then having to also, because again, like I lead the legal services, right? I oversee contract management, contract preparation, contract reviews, and managing our relationships with merchants, and things like that. It's also having to balance the interest of the company with the interests, the interest of our merchants, having to make crucial decisions as to when to cut the bluff or when to let things slide and things like that. I think that they are very minute things, but are very important and essential that a lot of, especially in-house counsel, sort of sometimes take for granted. So for me, I would say that my work cuts across both legal and to a very interesting extent business aspect of the business here.
Thank you. You mentioned something very important, and I picked that up, is managing stakeholders. So, because you are heading legal of a fintech company, you are in quotes in-house, in quotes, and by in quotes, I mean in quotes in-house. And one of the things that you basically have to find yourself doing is being able to balance interest between the interest of your company and, like you mentioned, your merchants, your stakeholders, and just being able to navigate that landscape. For me personally, as a corporate governance advisor, one of the things that I have realized is that the extent to which you can manage those relationships actually determine the success of your capacity or your being able to deliver as a lawyer, right? So let's not make this very generalistic. Let's give some typical examples. I recently worked with a tech platform or a tech company that they're trying to literally manage So there is a relationship between their stakeholders in terms of government regulators. They are actually in a very peculiar sector. The management of the board, their board members, and then of course their internal dynamics as well. Because one of the things that they are doing right now is that they are trying to pivot from one industry to the other. And whenever you are trying to pivot or you're just trying to manage or change your product or change your software, don't forget that sometimes for these startups, they already have people who are bought into them at their early stages before they even started growing or transforming their products. So one of the things I've realized beyond just being a lawyer in quotes is being able to communicate regulatory changes, because we are literally living in an ever evolving ecosystem where regulations can come and you definitely have to be prepared, right? So I think that is my own personal experience as far as being able to manage stakeholder relationships is concerned. So let me move to the next. Yeah, let's move to the next question. Let's talk about trends. Before you talk about the trend, there must have been an antecedent, right? Then before you talk about anything that has to do with innovation change, there is history. So I would love to have your perspective based on some of the specific, maybe you could call some specific examples. What are some of the current trends that you've actually seen and you think we will start seeing even as the ecosystem that we belong to, the startup ecosystem? What are some of the trends you've seen and you think that we'll start seeing this year and going forward based on the antecedents of 2022 and before?
All right. Yeah, thanks. So first, I think that again, 2023 is going to be a very interesting year, especially because I think it was yesterday that I had to post up on how 2023 seems like the anticlimax. So for some of us that were literature students, just after the climax, you have the anticlimax, then you get to the general resolution of the play, right? So I think that 2023 commences the anticlimax of the peak period that we had during the COVID period, right? And I say this because, of course, like every era defining event, COVID had a lot of shakeups. A lot of us started wearing those masks. I still go to some places and people still wear those masks. But of course, those things were not. So many of us started working remotely. For the first time, a lot of people were introduced to remote working, and then a lot of people like me, have hung up to the idea, and we can't imagine having to go to the office every day, especially when we live in Lagos. So many things like that. Our concept of socialization has been redefined, work culture, a lot of things like that. Even including remuneration of the office, and coupled with the emerging trend, with the new generation of workers in the labor market. There's a lot of concentration on corporate culture and things like that. Right. So between 2020, shortly before 2020, peaked of course in 2020, up until 2021, or should I say H1 2022, it was like everything just kept on going, kept on going, kept on going. Of course, what showed us that there had to at some point be some kind of resetting was the Bitcoin fall, right? I think it was sometime in late 2021 or 2022. I can't really remember. So that was the first thing that sort of like introduced us to the facts, right? That sorry, can you hear me?
So there's a little interference, so it's like we can't hear you very, very clearly. So
Okay.
something that you just, yeah.
Is it better now?
Yeah, sort of, yeah.
It is. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Oh, okay. I don't know how much you heard, but I was basically just saying that a lot of things happened pre 2023, right? A lot of them started. A lot of them peaked in 2022 and started experiencing their own anticlimax in 2022, right? So, for example, we had a lot of hirings in 2020, 2021, especially 2021. We had a lot of hirings. We had a lot of interjurisdiction hirings and things like that. But from H2 2022, we started seeing a lot of, particularly Q4 2022, we started seeing a lot of layoffs, right, from top companies. Twitter laid off people, DoorDash, Shopify, Coinbase just announced laying off about 20% of its people recently. I think about a few days ago, right? So that's like something that's like telling us that we have peaked at something. The market is about to reset itself, right? So 2023 is when I imagine that I anticipate that a lot of the resetting is going to come. Now, this doesn't mean that we're going back to pre-COVID era. No, I think what's going to happen is that there's going to be like a balance, right? I like financial history a lot, right? So let me just make a little bit of an allusion. If you check the 07, 09 mortgage crisis, subprime mortgage crisis in the US, so have eventually affected a lot of parts of the world. There were lots of innovations that came post. In fact, if you start from the dot-com bubble in the early 2000s, right? What happened pre the dot-com bubble was that there were a lot of startups, internet companies coming up, springing up, a lot of them with very high valuations. A lot of IPOs were in the offerings at the time. But there was a bust, of course, as it will always happen when there's a bubble. There's always going to be a bust, right? So there was a bust, in the early 2000s. What happened was that the if the events that led to the bubble did not totally evaporate. What just happened was that the market sort of had a reset to reached a compromise, a point that made sense, right? So we still have a lot of those tech companies now, right? If you look at what happened also in the subprime mortgage crisis 0709 in the US that led to a lot of parts of the world, it bettered a new generation of products, a new generation of financial regulation attitude, right? So you had a lot of, and then of course that then coincided with the mobile boom in the 2010s, right? The Web 2 that boomed a lot in the 2010s, right? And then we had a lot of mobile financial services. So what happened was that the market had unreasonably high expectation of itself in during the period before the subprime mortgage crisis. After the crisis, the market had a reset. Right? That is what is going to happen to I foresee now. So what's going to happen is that not everybody will lose their jobs, of course, but I foresee that, especially in terms of say maybe layoffs, of course, companies have now realized how important company culture is. So companies won't go back to having horrendous cultures. No, that's not what's going to happen. But what's going to happen is that instead of hiring 1 million people for tasks that are not even enough, you're going to have more scrutinous, more intelligent hiring path or processes or policies or strategies, right, for the available jobs with a good culture, right? So such things like that. You also see companies welcoming more the idea, even legacy firms welcoming more the idea of having maybe a hybrid work structure. 2 days in, 3 days out. That's on the employment angle. That's one of the things that I see will be happening in 2023. Another thing is that there's going to be a lot of emphasis on valuations, right? So one of the things that happened in the subprime mortgage crisis in 0709 was that there were a lot of, again, subprime mortgage. That was basically it. People who didn't have good credit rating were getting loans or mortgages that they wouldn't ordinarily have got, right? So we can sort of like link that to what happened with Bitcoin, right? In Bitcoin during the COVID period, especially Bitcoin, I think it peaked at about 60 something thousand. It was just common sense that it was going to drop at some point, right? Now, what has happened is like now I think it's now about 19,000 or thereabout. I'm not really sure what the price is at the moment. So what is happening is that there's a level of it's still going to fall below that, of course, right? But there's a level of normalcy being returned into the market. Now, if you bring that again into fintech or tech startup valuations, right, you would also see that there was a lot of hyper valuation during COVID. When companies like was it Zoom? When companies like Zoom had Netflix had incredible revenues for the year. There were lots of emphasis. We even had our own pay stack. That was the year pay stack also so to to Stripe. So we had a lot of valuations. Many of them, some of them good, but many of them overvalued, right? But you are seeing that the market is restoring that normalcy that it always does now. So, for example, Klarna in June 2021 raised an investment at about, I think it was about 60 billion valuation. Excuse me, about 60 billion value, about I think it was about 45 billion. Yes, about 45 billion valuation, right, in June 2021. But guess what? About About a year later, in June 2022, it raised about 5.5 billion at 6 billion valuation. What had happened was that the market, you can't cheat the market for too long, right? The market, that common sense will always come. Now, in 2023, a lot of those startups that raised, and what happens is this, right? I mean, I'm sorry for digressing a little bit. What happens is this. When you raise at an overvalued price, right? If you raise a round at an overvaluation, it becomes difficult for you to sustain those numbers when you're raising the subsequent round, right? So what happens is this: it is either you raise at a down round, which affects your existing investors, or you go out of the market. So imagine Klarna raising in June 2021 at $45 billion, and in June 2022, raised 5.5 at $6 billion valuation dollars, right? So we are going to see a lot of this in 2023, right? A lot of the crazy investments that we've had will, I mean, look at what happened with Frank and JP Morgan Chase, right?
Yeah.
It's so again, 2023, I anticipate that there's going to be a lot of restoration of common sense and normalcy into the market, right? Another thing that I see happening in 2023 is that there's going to be a lot of regulatory checkups. No, regulatory clarification. I think that's the best way to put it. So, for example, crypto, I foresee, for example, that in 2023, the CBN is going to have a clarification on its crypto stance, especially because we now have the Nigerian Startup Act, which promises that it's going to create a balance. The council that it creates is supposed to like oversee regulatory harmonization between the SEC and the CBN. So I anticipate that there's going to be some collaboration because Nigeria is losing a lot of money on the crypto scene, right? And beyond that, recent events in the crypto space, the what's this popular? The SBF FTX issue. Recently, we had the DCG issue too, right? These issues, of course, I hope that Nigeria doesn't experience something like this, right? But if Nigeria does, there's going to be a lot of issues. So you don't want to leave an entire market like that hanging without some regulatory clarity. So I also imagine that in 2023, that is also something that will be seeing some kind of happenings in. Lastly, for now, I also think that there's going to, and this is related to everything I've said. So I expect that there's going to be a lot of compliance as a service coming up, right? Because again, like just like what Rosemont is doing with startup compliance series, this is one of them. This is on the education side, right? There's going to be a lot of such things, either on the education side, on the product side, because again, you can't have a robust and working ecosystem without sensitization. Sensitization is a key part of the entire, compliance ecosystem. So I expect that, there are going to be things like this. Then there are going to be product compliance as a service product, for a lot of companies. I see that law firms would also be bringing this, incorporating active compliance services in their legal structure in 2023. So yeah, so those are just some of my thoughts about some of the things.
Fantastic, right? I don't know what else I want to say, but this is just super enlightening, right? Please, if you have comments in the comment section, I can see the comment section blowing up, so I love it. You mentioned something very, very important: reset, right? 2020 threw a lot of people into fear of the unknown. And 2021 was an aftermath of 2020 where you had the change. Let's even draw it down to even the work environment, the workspace, right? A lot of people say, oh, remote work is now the future. Nobody's coming to the office again. Everybody shut your door. Let's all work, in our recluses, in our houses. But now you see people resetting now. People are coming back with hybrid options. It's not 100% anymore, right? Let's talk about the issue of valuation, right? There was a conversation I was having recently with a startup founder, and there was something he said specifically. He said, look, a lot of people think that because we are able to scale, that simply means that scalability can happen as a result of just putting some value and some figures on paper. Let's not forget how the startup fundraising process works in itself, right? For you to even have a valuation of a product, that simply means that there are some certain milestones that have been hit. You don't just wake up in the morning and say, oh, my startup is now $50 billion, $60 billion. Like you rightly said, the market will prove you wrong or otherwise. And that even brings me to some of the issues that we had, right? There's been a little downturn as at, I think, Q3, Q4 2022, where you have some startups who went ahead to list themselves on the US stock exchange, right? Even compared to the local stock exchange, realizing that their shares are literally dipping in value. Now, there are lots of concerns on this. There have been some questions that why would this happen? And there are some, I would say, some thoughts by some thought leaders. They basically stated that maybe it's because those listings are in ecosystems and territories where they are located, the people who are basically in charge of that ecosystem do not use those products, right? Some are proposing that that's one of the reasons why the shares may have dipped, because at the end of the day, the market determines the price as long as you go on an IPO. And for those that do not know what an IPO is, it simply means initial public offering, right? It's one of the ways, startups, they expand and of course they increase capital. So there was a decline in that. Another thing I basically observed is that there was basically a reduction in some of the total funding rounds. As at last week, I was looking at a report by Brit, and what the projected total capital fundraising that has happened in the continent of Africa is about $4.8 billion, right? As in the entire funding process. And compared to 2021, it's actually a little dip. So, like, it actually proves and validates what you said, that the market is actually trying to realign itself. And you rightly said that these are some of the things that we are going to see happening. I know that right now, some of there is now a different ways by which there's a lot of acquisition going on. So if companies are not being listed, they are doing a lot of mergers and acquisitions now, right? And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I can list some very specific examples. You have, okay, so let's even look at Nigeria. You have Float, which is a fintech located in Ghana, acquiring accounts here. Of course, it was undisclosed, but of course, the Tech Cover report shows that. You have that. You have organizations like Impressa acquiring Gumtree, which is a South African company. Even around the African ecosystem, you realize that there's a lot of merger and acquisitions going on. So these are some of the things that I know will keep happening, because a lot of startups will now begin to realize that, look, the reality of it is that we are not sure if we continue with the same procedures and the same prospect that we are in quotes claiming, we may not be sustainable for long. So the sooner they try to put their houses in order, like you mentioned, compliance as a service, very, very key. Let's talk in terms of compliance as well. I will also talk about ESG. Now it's almost like it's a buzzword, but everybody knows that it's one of the key. It's a key factor: environment and sustainability and governance. A lot of companies are now looking as to how these companies are able to comply with ESG protocol, ESG principles, and these are some of the things that a lot of businesses, whether you are a startup or you've been existing for years, you can no longer you cannot overlook. Right? Like I said, there's going to be more expansion, but now due diligence will become a critical thing. It's not just going to be a passerby. So let's shake some tables a bit, right? Sorry, I'm about to go a little bit controversial. Like let's go. Let's shake some tables. Now, from Theranos to Frank to FTX, all these things to me have something in common. A due diligence process was overlooked, whether we choose to agree or not. Let me even throw an analogy back to the Enron scandal. You talked about the dot-com bubble. Let's throw a throwback to the Enron scandal. One of the key critical things that came up from that report after the Enron scandal was the lawyers were in on it. The government regulators were in on it. Financial institutions, financial organizations were on this, right? Venture capital organizations, funders, private equity investors were in on that scandal. And by in on that scandal means that they were aware of some gaps, right? I do not think that people are so naive to know when the I's are not dotting and the T's are not crossing, I wrote something on my LinkedIn post this morning. I said the startup due diligence a fraud because if you are going to do due diligence means due diligence, right? So how do you get to a point where you are able to falsify these things and they're having rubber stamps of approval? That begins to question the compliance processes of those organizations. And beyond those organizations, even the regulators who have the responsibility not only to look at those reports, but to confirm if those reports are actually legitimate. So I want to know what your thoughts are because honestly, just by the fall of FTX alone, we can count nothing less than over 6 startups who had to lay off staff and still counting till date because most of their investment capital were in that exchange. We see the crash of Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, even the Web3 right now has become less of a vibe now because of these seeming issues. And they all, I feel very strongly that they fall down to a gap in compliance. Of course, other factors determine. So I would love to know your thoughts, especially looking at all these stories that we keep hearing. I saw a very funny tweet by a very popular tech founder, and it was like the Forbes to prison pipeline is almost automatic these days. So I really want to shake that table. We need to really discuss this, right? Who is involved, right? And it's not even just about casting the blame. Where are the gaps, right? And basically, what are your thoughts on all these crashes that we keep hearing about that are seem to really, really upset a lot of venture funders? Because some of the things I see now is that you're going to have less enthusiasm on startups just being able to just quote a figure and people just dump money into it. It's going to be a bit more strenuous, even for the legitimate ones. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Thank you. So I think the first thing I want to say is we need to extend a lot of grace to the African startup ecosystem. It's so easy to because I don't want to be overly pessimistic, but I think that Africa is going to have a lot of maybe a few. Let me know it's a lot of hits, but maybe a few hits this year. Again, why do I say this? So after the FTX issue, we had some startups that were affected, right? That had their their assets also in the whole FTX rules, right? If we may possibly experience another of such major hits in 2023, then you may anticipate that Nigerian startups or African startups would be affected one way or the other. So, but I think that events like this are turning points in the history of business development, right? The development of the business ecosystem of a particular place. So no system is so mature as enough to be able to avoid forever these things. If you've been following some of the things, you realize the issue with the Swiss bank, one of the largest financial institutions in the history of the world. Recently, I think it's still even ongoing, such that there was a projection of a pending recession in Europe, and what that would cause. So, if an established system, an established institution like the Swiss bank, is still having some of these issues that we're talking about, then we just need to extend a lot of grace to African startups and founders when or if some of these things happen to them. Right. That said, I agree with you 100%. There's no smoke, there's no fire without a smoke. Right. Some powerful people have to be complicit, right, before some of these issues can happen. There is no way that you have, for example, somebody did not do his or her or their due diligence well in the Frank JP Morgan deal. There's no way such thing happens when everybody has done what they are supposed to do, right? When everybody has done what they're supposed to do, right? So what I think, right, is that there has to be, especially for founders, right? Founders have to understand that certain roles, even though they are not income generating roles, right? They are cost saving roles, right? And if you, I mean, there are some theories that believe that cash is king, right? But if you want to have a lot of cash, then you have to block holes for your cash not to leave, right? Now, these roles are roles like compliance roles, for example. If you do not have a solid compliance team, one hit, we've been seeing a lot of, I was teasing about it on one time on LinkedIn, I think it was this week, and I was saying that I was wondering how much these top tech companies allocate for, for their compliance fines. I mean, it baffles me. Today, year 5.4 million, tomorrow, year 10 point something million, 15 million. How much, right? But if you have I mean, I understand if you have been in the system long enough, you know that these are risk conversations, right? The risk departments, sort of make some of this. So I laughed when I heard people saying, "Oh, Flutter Wave, that time, or Flutter Wave is a bad place. They are using that." I just laugh. No, companies make active decisions on the kind of risk they want to undertake, they want to absorb, right? They are aware of the potential fallout that will come from those risks, right? But imagine that you are making 500 million from a venture and your potential risk exposure is 5 million. I mean, you go for it, right? Provided, of course, that you then have to, of course, consider reputational risk and all those other things. But if your anticipation is that, hey, if you put all of these things together, we can manage it, well, you go for it. Guess what? Sometimes, because it's a bet, right? Sometimes you may not even have, you may not even have a fallout, right? But what I'm trying to say is that startup founders need to understand, right, that some roles are not income generating, right, but they help you save a lot of cost. They help you save a lot of damage. They help you save a lot of potential risks to your business, to the existence, to the core of your business, right? For example, I've forgotten the name of this Canadian startup, right? They have totally eroded their assets, right? Everything. So they are filing for bankruptcy. Definitely some people did not do a good job, right? And it could be because the budgetary allocation to those roles that we should have done, the job was not enough to sustain that, that role. That's one bit of it. Excuse me. I think another bit and equally important is that compliance professionals, legal professionals, anybody that is involved, in mitigating potential risk exposures to companies, need to also understand that their work is pivotal to the existence of the company, right? I understand that the paycheck is very important at the end of the month, right? But if you don't do your work well, the company may fall, and I mean fall literally. And when the company falls, it also, has a lot of um, side effects on you, on your CV, right? Imagine you are the chief compliance officer or the lead legal services of FTX. I, how do you explain it, right? That you were there all this while and all of these things were going on. So we also need to understand that there's this stakeholder theory of corporate governance, right? We are all stakeholders, right? Whether you are a founder, a co-founder, a compliance analyst, a compliance associate, legal associate at the bottom of the pyramid, or you are the lead legal service, head of legal, chief legal officer, we are all stakeholders and everybody needs to do their job, right? So I think that if we take some of these things seriously, some of the issues that we have, will not again, like we said, the due diligence issue, for example. If somebody did his or her work or their work well, JP Morgan won't have this issue. There is this, I think it's Nicolo. I'll confirm the name, right? And then it was a car making, a vehicle making company. Ford invested in this company. Ford, right? And guess what? It was a total fluke. It was just like Elizabeth Holmes company and SBF's FTX. They were making absolute nothing. People are no longer taking due diligence very seriously, even institutional investors. Now, if you keep having these kind of problems, right, you continue to erode the trust in the market because again, the rumors we've heard. I'm not an institutional investor. I don't manage anybody's assets. We read the things we see on the media, right? All we hear is that a lot of subsequent investors or lower investors in a round, for example, they invest based on the reputation of the lead investor. So if the lead investor has not done a good job, in vetting the books, the story, the assets, the everything, the liabilities, the potential risk exposure of the company that you're investing in, then imagine what's going to happen to the funds of so many private investors. I mean, their LPs. So these are things that we need to begin to take very seriously in 2023 and going forward.
Awesome, right? And see, the one that just shocked me when you said, "Imagine you're the head of compliance." Ah, please, no, see, because honestly, it just re-emphasizes the importance of valuing growth and development above imminent and immediate results, right? You are a startup for a reason. Nobody expects you to hit the magic figures immediately. But at least that's why any typical or any proper venture capital organization will ask you 3 questions. Number one, your business model. Number two, what's your client's acquisition strategy? Number three, are you profitable? What's your year on year? They're very basic questions that you ask, right? And it's just being able to churn out documents to prove this for me as a venture capital founder or whatever it is that I become is not going to be enough. There must be real testimonies or real experiences of people who can testify as to growth, because it's beyond just being able to put figures out there. There's something also I would love to say, especially as far as these crashes and all these things are concerned, is what I would call corporate governance. And corporate governance is a very, very intricate part of regulatory compliance. When you talk about corporate governance, you are not just talking about how is the organization run. You're talking about the internal practices of the organization, ranging from the board of directors, even down to the employees, the shareholders in the middle, and the investors at each end. Think of it more or less like a secular relationship. I know that, of course, in Nigeria, as far as public organizations are concerned, may not be too enforced in the startup space. We have the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance 2018, where you have some very key principles as regards corporate governance, ranging up from the board to risk assurance to ethical conduct and all that. There's been a lot of growth and innovation in that space. And of course, we are basically, taking from other foreign jurisdictions on how this works. And I look at it like, if these foreign jurisdictions are being hit this hard, what's the hope for us? And there was something you said, because see, you have very highly esteemed foreign founders, tech founders who are going through some of these challenges. And the problem that I have always encountered is how will this bode for the African tech ecosystem? But the good news is that although there was a little decline in injection in capital from Q3, Q4 compared to 2021 and even now, like you said, I think that in 2023, there's just going to be some sort of realignment. You've used the word reset, right? There's going to be a lot of people wiping the smoke off their eyes and realizing that, guys, we really have to get to work. And you rightly said this, compliance becomes a key performance indicator in the success of every organization. It's no longer about the figures, it's not all about what you are able to put on paper, but it's about your practice. What do you do? How regularly do you file? Some of these key things that we're talking about, right? So it's so important that that is actually one of the things that are typically done. So very, very interesting. I really love how this conversation is going, but we cannot shake tables forever, right? It's for those who have heard this to pay attention and see. So I'm going to round up this particular question with this. I speak to startup founders a lot. I belong to a community where I have hundreds of them. And 50 to 60% of them will tell you that they do not, and I think this is something that if anyone gets to this part in this video, please drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts, because I'm actually following the comments online. People see legal practitioners and lawyers as vitamins and not painkillers. Let me explain. A vitamin is something you take, it's a nice to have, A painkiller is, this thing is critical, I need it now, this is the only way. A lot of people don't see legal services like that. But I am glad that it's now changing, because every time I am privileged to speak to a group of startup founders or business owners, and I ask them this question, Is legal services a painkiller or a vitamin? They tell you, you understand? And as much as it is interesting to sit as lawyers and gloats and be like, don't worry, when they fall into trouble, they will look for us. It's important for us to position ourselves in such a way that we are not too high off or too far away from these guys, because the truth is that they don't think they need us, but they do. I don't know if you're following what I'm trying to say. So it's important, and I see that a lot of startups now are really, having compliance roles, really, really bringing an edge, because it's very, very critical. So I want to use this in quote to pass a message out there to, if you're a business owner watching this, if you're a startup founder watching this, or you are planning to own, please do not consider legal as an unnecessary expense. It is a very critical part of the success of the organization. Why? Because we are walking into a new system where compliance is the minimum standard. I can bring some very specific examples. We're talking about taxes. A lot of business owners right now, let's even speak very, very rudimentary. A lot of business owners do not even understand what are some of the things expected from them, from the FIRS, from the LIRS, from the NISA, different organizations that are responsible for key aspects of their business. If you do not know these things, get and reach out to a compliance professional and say, look, this is my business, look at it, look at areas that we need to tidy up. I see more of that happening now, and I want to encourage that it keeps happening, okay? So let me move to the next part of this question. So there is something you mentioned about, so I love this ongoing conversation about artificial intelligence, right? I love this conversation about artificial intelligence and the fact that everybody's panicking. Like, oh, the jobs of lawyers are going to be replaced by chat GPT in quotes, or the job of this is going to be replaced by this. We are here again. We just got out of an excitement. Now we are entering into another one, and that a new one is artificial intelligence, AI. AI is doing this. I need to know in just a minute, because we're almost hitting our 1 hour mark. We will have opportunities for questions and answers, right? I would love to know your thoughts. And while you're sharing your thoughts on AI, I'll be sharing some data insights from Tech Hive Advisory and Brittany, who basically shared some statistics that we can always screenshot and put, and of course we share that after now. So please, while I'm doing that, please share your thoughts about the advent of, not that it's an advent, it's always been here, but I'd love to know your thoughts about this thing about AI replacing our jobs and all that. Just want to hear your perspective.
Thank you. So I think this is very important, and it's very important because I think with every new with every gigantic innovation, right? Every massive innovation, there has to be some kind of cultural shift, right? Social cultural shift, right? And and AI is not going to be any different. We already have a lot of AIs, that we interact with. Um, mess, what's it called? This AI chatbots, that we chat with on companies, websites. We have Grammarly. We have a lot of them already that we already interface with. But what is particularly interesting about ChatGPT, right, is that it's it redefines a lot of things for you. I had a post about it on how this is going to affect entry level jobs. Trust me, every day that I come on LinkedIn, I find a very interesting use case for ChatGPT that somebody has already done, right? I myself, I during the craze of ChatGPT, right? I asked it to create for me a movie script for a tech startup series, and then sorry, a script for a tech startup podcast, and it gave me line by line intro. I, I was like, wow. I mean, the sad thing was that I didn't save it. I think I was too amazed and I was lost in thoughts, thinking about the philosophy of jobs and how this is going to affect everything. It's going to affect a lot of things. It's going to affect how we teach people in school, how we address, how we employ people, why we employ people, right? It's going to affect how we relate with our friends. It's going to affect everything, right? I mean, the interesting thing is that I think just about a few hours ago today, I saw that Google is also launching its own competition to ChatGPT, and what Microsoft is planning to do with it with Bing, right? And I keep thinking about it, and I keep wondering. The key question is, will this AI take our jobs? And I think the simple answer is no. Okay, yes and no. Yes, because of course it's going to take some jobs, right? For some people who are unable to innovate, right? My principle since I started working is innovate or die, right? And that is because if you spend, like I spend a lot of time, you know, researching, following tech trends. If you spend just a little bit of your time, following tech trends, you will know even before ChatGPT, since about 5 7 years ago, that AI and machine learning, you know, is was going to come, right? It was just a matter of time. The time is now, right? You know that metaverse is going to redefine a lot of things. You know that blockchain has come to redefine a lot of things for us. You know that this tech will take out some jobs, right? But the interesting thing is that by taking out some jobs, they also introduce another kind of jobs. Because what happens is that the people who are able to relate with them, interact with this tech, the best, are the people who get the better of them. The interesting thing is that between 2020 and 2022, H1, more precisely Q3, the people who made a lot of money, the tech guys, they still make a lot of money now, right? But the people, tech roles were very accentuated. It was like if you were not a tech guy, if you're not a tech guy, you're not a Bitcoin guy, you are broke, right? And it's to keep up with the appearance that made me add legal tech bro to my name, so that they can think, you know. I mean, so the point is that the tech bros in quote and tech Cs, right? They were able to make a lot of money because they were in high demand, already in high demand, because the market was growing at an exponential rate relative to the available skill sets in the market, right? So that means that, of course, it's just a simple law of demand and supply. The higher the demand, the higher the price, right? So the demand was more, which meant that the people who could do the work had to earn more. It's the same thing that's going to happen with AI. The fewer the people who understand how to relate with this tech, right, this new tech, right, the higher their value is going to be in the market. So I think AI is going to take some jobs, but I also think that it's going to introduce, a new set of jobs, for the people who are innovative enough to be able to learn how to interact with it.
Thank you so much. Like I said, I was going to share some data insights, right? You can always have that while we are discussing on this. And it's very, very critical to understand that. Okay, so I saw a comment that there's going to be an AI robot that's going to be defending in court. And obviously, that is something that is happening right now. So, basically understanding this innovative process, and like you said, it's innovate or die, right? I don't think everybody should jump into tech and say, now I'm in tech. Of course, you still need people who are soldiering the front in the courtroom, those who are doing secretarial work. Not everybody has to be in tech, but you cannot deny the impact that AI is going to have on your work. You give an example of how a script was written for you. For me, the next, will I use the word 6 months of content has been properly defined. The only difference now is that I add my flavor. I'm able to edit. I have people who have told me that, look, I've written my book using ChatGPT. There's so many possibilities, but I don't think this is all there is. We have so many innovations that are still being cooked up, right? Basically, so in healthcare, let's look at healthcare for instance, right? You have the possibility of being able to have external growth of children, right? Of course, whether you believe in the morality or otherwise of it is something that's up for debate, but that doesn't mean that that's not being prepared, right? You talked about this issue about artificial intelligence being able to defend in court. There are issues on the metaverse and Web3. In fact, even when we talk about some of the possibilities and some of the career opportunities for lawyers in that space, beyond just compliance, you have dispute resolution, right? You have data, and that's something I want to round off this particular aspect of the question with, is data compliance, right? I did something, right? I'm going to share an example of something a conversation I had with this chat GPT, and I asked the question. I said, do you, in the course of carrying out your functions, I even did a screenshot, it's just that it's not here. Do you, in the course of your functions as an artificial intelligence platform, listen in on conversations or record them? What it responded, I may not have the very specific captions, but what it basically said is, I take oral and written instruction and translate them into results based on data that has been given to me. I asked it like 3 times because I wanted that solution to clarify if he was listening in on conversations that we're having. It's, of course, it's a very funny question. It may be something that may not be important. I asked this question in such a way that at the end of the day, it responded and said, I apologize. This is exactly what it said. I apologize, I may have misconstrued my earlier response. I was like, in my mind now, I've made artificial intelligence to apologize, but I was trying to prove a point that, look, we need to understand that whatever it is that we are doing as far as iterating artificial intelligence is involved in, data is part of it. You are feeding data. In fact, the only reason why ChatGPT exists is because it was giving data. Now you have the GDPR, you have now the Nigerian Data Protection Regulations, right, which has been recently been modified. Startups need to start paying attention to these issues, because even as you begin to grow as a business or as a startup and you're beginning to scale into foreign jurisdictions, you need to understand the laws that even regulate how you even use their clients' data in the first place, right? So this is something that I think I wanted to add, even while we are talking about this issue of artificial intelligence, because like everybody throws away their mind when they see, oh, this is something that's going to help our lives. Is it listening on your conversations? What does it do with your data? Does it keep it after a particular period of time? Is it in compliance with the GDPR? Is it in compliance with the NDPR or the data protection regulations of whatever country that it's situated in? So those are very key things that have to be understood even as a legal practitioner, because these are some of the issues and the questions you are going to have to answer if you are a compliance officer in a startup, right? So these are very critical issues that should also be paid attention to, beyond just saying, oh, tech is the future. There's so much to talk about, right? I don't think we can finish all that in this particular webinar. We're literally 1 hour after 7, like we're literally like 8:02, and me, I can still go on, but I know that when the other has to do some weekend things.
Sorry,
But
I just wanted to add something.
Okay, yeah.
Yes. So I'm sorry. Just give me like 5 minutes. So I want to. I can see some comments in the chat box. I just wanted to address some of them. So again, just like you have rightly said, Rosemont, I think that when we say, oh, AI is going to take our jobs, I don't think the idea is that it's going to take all our jobs, right? I don't even think it's going to take a lot of our jobs. I only think that it's going to take a lot of the jobs that are mechanical, right? And unfortunately, the parts in the professional journey where the work is a lot of A plus A equals to 2A, 1 plus 1 equals to 2 is at the entry level, and that is almost at every kind of job, even lawyers, right? What do you do as an entry level associate? You carry out research for your partners or your senior associate, prepare the first level draft, and all of those things. Now, there's an AI that is developed in Japan, although for a different purpose, right? It is touted to have emotional not emotional ability to adapt to emotional responses. Excuse me. What this means is that this AI is able to, feel emotions. It has a little bit of empathy, according to the people who built it. I mean, of course, these claims haven't been verified. But what I've realized in the history of tech development is that once it has been conceived, it is most likely going to be done. Right? That's basically it, right? So when this happens, right? Entry level guys, an entry level lawyer, for example, does research and then prepares the first draft. If the AI is able to do this thing, is able to prepare the first draft based on the information that you give to it, is able to carry out research and give you concise in real time. Now imagine why you need an entry level associate who is going to leave you at some point for 10 plus when they offer the guy 750K, right? Or is going to leave you and go in house when they offer him 3 million naira per month that you can't afford at the time, in spite of all of the efforts that I have spent training this person. And I mean, think about it. For marketing strategists, right? They've also tried, this as a use case. You've seen a lot of marketing strategists who have, inputted instructions into ChatGPT, and it came up with a marketing plan or marketing strategy for them to use. This is so what basically happens is, of course, you won't just take this and then take it to your client or something. But it has reduced your work because you don't have to generate these documents or these strategies from the scratch. All you just need to do is peruse it just as you would have done for the entry level associate, right? And mind you, if it develops at the level that I think it's going to develop, then it can even adapt to your specific scenario as a business such that it can learn. So the data that they have fed it, to learn as much as it has learned till it gets to this point, it can then learn your own processes as a business such that it can provide even more intelligent responses to your specific needs as a business. Now tell me why you need an entry level guy. Those are the issues. The only entry level guy you will need at the time is an entry level guy that is telling you that, hey, you know what? I have mastered how to use ChatGPT. See, guy, I know how to use ChatGPT. I can use it in a way that none of you in this office can use. I mean, of course, like I'm somebody that can come and say, I can use it better than a lot of people, can demonstrate how using it is going to make more sense for you as a business. That's the kind of guy you want to go for, right? And again, just like I've seen with the tech boom, that is the kind of guy that's going to earn a lot of money in this AI revolution. Thank you, Rosemary, for the.
Exactly. So from what I can see, you're basically talking technology exists for us and not us for technology. We built it, right? The human mind was smart enough to conceive something like this. So the human mind is definitely smart enough to manipulate it to its advantage. So I don't think we are living in a post-apocalyptic world where I don't see that happening, and it's not in my generation anyways. Hopefully, where you have aliens coming or something. No, I think it's the intelligence to manipulate these systems and not just discountenance them and say, no, we don't need it. You bring it in and you see how can it make your organization better. Let's look at some comments, right? Because we're about to taper this to a close. I'm just going to read some comments from, so if you notice that I'm looking at, because I'm actually trying to monitor the comments on my screen. So Osana Williams Adusa says, what would a lawyer interacting with the tech look like? Will all lawyers need to learn how to code? Off the top of my head, no, I don't think so. There are so many platforms. In fact, there are projects and there are products that are built with no code. There are no code projects, if I'm correct, Dolapo, right? Zapier is one of the most interesting tools that actually allows you to literally build and scale your business without writing a single line of code. And it's able to take your customers from the beginning of a sales funnel right down to the very end, right? So there are so many products that are already built. I do not personally think that there's a need to reinvent the wheel. If the wheel already exists, just what's the word, walk around it. I don't know if you have similar thoughts.
Yes,
That,
I mean, I absolutely agree with you, and I think again, this brings me to the question that a lot of people who reach out to me and are interested in tech law, right, ask me, whether they need to code. Again, there's a distinction between tech tech law or legal tech, yes, and tech law, right? As a tech lawyer, you don't, as a lawyer generally, either tech law or whatever, you interact with tech. When we think about tech, we are thinking programming, HTML, CSS,
yeah, Python,
and all those. Yes, exactly. Right, that's what we're thinking about. But Microsoft, using Microsoft is a kind of tech, right? So there's software, there's hardware. Knowing how to use computer is a kind of tech, right? We are interacting with this tech every now and then. Now, AI, artificial intelligence, right? Grammarly is a kind of tech, right? So those are tech that we interface with. Now, what I say every time, and I'm going to say again, is that as a lawyer, there is absolutely no need, 100% no need for you to learn programming. I started out as a front-end developer, right? I build web apps, I used to build web apps. But you realize that both software development, software engineering, and law, they are two jealous professions that you can't, successfully complement. You can't, right? And I'm speaking from experience. Again, this is a generalist perspective. I'm sure there are some outliers out there. Unfortunately, I'm not, right? So I'm sure there are some people who have been able to, who are SANs and astute software developers out there. I know, but I'm not, right? And it's very difficult, right? And what I realized, luckily for me, very early on, was that you do not need to you do not need to learn programming to be a good tech lawyer. What you need to know is how to use the tech that you need as a lawyer. For example, ChatGPT is coming on now, right? What you want to do is study, and for me, for example, I study a lot of trends. What is happening? You want to be aware of this tech and then know how to manipulate them, as Osman has said, manipulate them to your specific use case, right? So, for example, everybody shouting ChatGPT, ChatGPT. Have you interacted with it? Have you actually used it? Tried so many things with it? Have you sort of asked it to prepare a document for you? Maybe ask it to prepare a contract, giving it inputted some scenarios, and then ask it to prepare a simple contract for you or a complex contract for you so that you can identify the challenges with this tech, so that you can understand how far it can go, the limitations it currently has, and then what you can do, right, as a lawyer to improve on this kind of tech, and how you can, improve your work. That is what then separates you as a tech lawyer. Now, understanding again, as Rosamond has said, the limitations of this tech in terms of compliance, and legal framework perspective is also very important. For example, when I was logging into the app, right, for ChatGPT, what I was looking out for, again, I'm sorry, but as a data protection professional, these are things that your mind would naturally go to. What I was looking out for was, what is the data protection practice? My major issue with AI has always been, from Web 2, of course, has always been the aggregation, of data, how, the commoditization of data, right? You had, was it brackets? There's this Braze, I think it was Braze, I can't really remember. A website that was built on blockchain, and was touting that, oh, it has 100% data protection. And we eventually found out that it was even selling our data too, right? So when I checked ChatGPT, there was a disclaimer there, right, around that. I have to take a screenshot on my phone. I can't find it. I'll put it up for you guys, right? And then in my mind, I started thinking about the liability of that, that AI, right? If you rely on it, who is going to take responsibility for it? How can you prove it? Right? That's one. Now, if the AI comes and pulls a document from, let's say you have asked a question, what's it now? Prepare a document, a contract between me and somebody else, for example. And then this guy goes to, what's the name of this popular contract, this thing that everybody uses? There's
I know
this
business in a box, Panda Docs.
business in a box. Goes to
Yeah.
business in a box and then pulls an entire frame templates from there and then gives it to you. And then you use it. Okay, let's say the risk of finding that is different. Okay, let's assume that Mo Abdu, right, or Kole Afonlayo has written a fantastic script for Election Yoba Part 2. Or, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm mixing up the titles of their movies, but pardon me. Has written a fantastic, sequel to Election Yoba, right? And then I stored it in a drive, in his Google Drive, right? And you now ask, write me a movie for a that has this, characteristics and all those things. And then this guy, your ChatGPT goes to Pulia von Lion's drive, accesses it, without authorization, and then gives it to you. You make it into a movie, and then you fly. Who is going to be liable from the copyright perspective? Those are questions. Those are interesting questions that I foresee we are going to have, right? If ChatGPT, goes, and then if a child interfaces with ChatGPT and asks how to make molly or how to make weed, and then uses it, who is responsible for such things, right? There are moderation professionals on Google, right? Are there moderation professionals? Are there trust and safety professionals for ChatGPT? Now, these are the things that lawyers are going to be, making money, a lot of money for, because they're going to be consulting you. That is what you should be thinking. Don't forget about coding and programming. That's not your own problem. Your problem is how do I advise on the issues that will definitely come up, from using this technology. Thank you.
Exactly. I feel like you should just drop mic now. Just drop drop the mic. Honestly, like these are the controversies, like because when Web3 came, everybody was shouting NFT, NFT, NFTs. When you have conflict, they need lawyers, right? Who is thinking about arbitration in the metaverse? Who is building a metaverse platform to be able to solve international cross-boundary arbitration? Like that's how we should be thinking as innovators, right? So let me not close my team. Answer that question perfectly, right? So Joel Adeyemi says, in 2022, we saw a rise in local VC funds in Africa. Is that a trend that's going to continue in 2023? How should lawyers react to that trend? So I think Oye had already mentioned something about this. Yes, it's going to keep coming, but there's not going to be a hype as much, right? Because like he rightly said, the market is going to literally be, recalibrating itself. Of course, I think that more investors will be more inclined to come in. Africa is such a beautiful place for growth. So I don't see that tapering down extremely, but we actually think that it's going to actually, be a little bit more stable now. It's not just going to be super intense and you're having super valuations and all that. No, there's literally going to be more attention being paid to your figures, your facts, your valuation processes, startup compliance, your corporate governance, and that's really going to be very it's going to be key indicators as to the kind of amounts that we're going to receive, right? So as we all know, we had about 4.8 billion. That is for disclosed rounds. For all disclosed together, you have about $5.8 billion. And whether that's going to increase or reduce is going to depend on some of the things that we're already seeing as this year has already started, right? Let me see if there are any more comments so that we can move to the last part and we have to round up. I am so sorry kept anyone before beyond an hour, but this is such an interesting conversation. Like I can have this conversation every day, every single day. Yinka said it would be interesting to see how ChatGPT remodels how lawyers work. To begin with, do we have to amend our laws to allow an AI to practice law? The Legal Practitioners Act does not allow you to practice law except you be caught in Nigerian bar of the body of ventures. It will be interesting to see how this plays out. Well, yes, but you're talking about a third-party service, right? So it's not as if they are going to be listed, but of course, these are some of the considerations that you have. You are the lawyer, you are the one that is using the tool. Like I said, technology exists for humans and not humans for technology. We are the ones that are in control. I always have to have that mindset. So let's go to the last part. Please keep the conversations coming. I really love the energy I'm seeing in the conversation, but let's move to very short, and I'm going to share something that will guide this conversation. It's going to be done in 5 minutes. I promise. I promise not to be here beyond 15 minutes, hopefully. Right, hopefully. So let's talk about, for the startup act that has come. Everybody has talked about it, but just your thoughts, maybe a 2-minute thought on what you think. So I personally have spoken to it a lot. It's beautiful that Nigeria is following the steps of Tunisia, Ethiopia, a couple of countries who have taken it to heart to be able to have this startup act. And I think one of the key critical things that we have to start paying attention to is the fact that regulations are now trying to catch up with innovation. And when you have that catch-up process, for me, I think the only comment I have is that we should not be too fixated on what the law is. We should actually be thinking about where the law should be, right? If our goal is to match up with current growth ecosystems in other countries, developing countries, or developed countries, then we shouldn't be so fixated on just having the laws. The most important thing we need to start paying key attention to is implementation, right? So you can have so many laws on paper. I think implementation is where it's at. So for example, in the Startup Act, you're talking about having a one-stop shop portal. My question in January 2023, what's going on? Has this portal been launched? Because the essence of having this one-stop shop portal is to have all the key regulators in Nigeria, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the NITDA, the National Office for Technology Acquisition and Promotion, the NIPC, the Nigerian Investment Promotion Council, all these organizations or commission, all these organizations coming together to give access to startups to obtain licenses, right? So if you have this law, where is the implementation? That's my question, right? And I'm hoping to see rapid implementation, because the truth is that technology moves fast, innovation moves fast, laws always struggle to catch up with speed. I'm hoping that that's not going to be the situation with this Startup Act. What are your thoughts, Wayne?
I mean, I don't have any thoughts because you summed it up. The truth is that like I've said, right, in some of my posts on the Startup Act and some of the commentaries I've also made on the Startup Act, what is going to what the true test of the potency of the Startup Act is going to be the implementation. There's a lot of English in that document, a lot of fantastic English in that document. If the implementation doesn't match up the English, then I mean we are as good as not having it. But I think that some of the interesting things about the art is that it reflects contemporary. It subtly addresses or subtly points at the um, the the potential effects that it may have on the ecosystem if not properly implemented. And one that is very important to me is the the rights, the power of the council to
Mm,
work with the CBN and the SEC for harmonization of laws on startups and other regulators on harmonization of laws on startups. I mean, for those of us who advise startups, you'd see that the majority of the problems that we face, that we have, is that there are just too many of these laws. So many of them no longer relevant, but they are still there. And of course, until the law has been effectively repealed, it is still, excuse me, it is still in operation, right? And you still have to comply with it. There are many things that we don't even know what is going on. You don't even know how to go about it.
mm,
The SEC released the cryptocurrency digital assets regulation sometime last year, right? Till now,
mhm.
the implementation is still hush hush, right? So those are some of the things that I'm hoping that the Startup Act would come and then address for us, right? But I think it's a necessary first step in a very very good direction. Implementation again is going to be the true test of the potency of that.
Lovely, lovely. So as you can see, if you see my screen, so Nigeria is one of those that have caught up, because the Startup Act of Tunisia has been done as far back as 2018. So it's not as if we are doing something that is so great, right? It's actually just trying to match up to where our colleagues or our co-countries are. There's the issue of tax, so being able to compare tax regimes. That's even a different conversation for another day. That can't even be done today. But just basically, you need to keep to trends. You need to understand where we are before we can understand where we are going. So this is a report, and I really, when I came across the report, I was sharing with you that I was very, very impressed. Talked about the issues that a lot of startups face in terms of starting a business, and it's ranked based on who is the best and basically how easy it is, right? So you have 5 countries that we actually put on the scope here: Tunisia, Senegal, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Nigeria. So from starting a business to assessing credit, paying taxes, cost of setup, enforcing contracts, and the best startup environment, you see that as that just last year, Nigeria did not rank top in any of these quarters. And it simply means that there's still a lot of work to be done, especially by our regulators. We also see how important it is to be able to understand that whatever we do, we must pay key attention to growth. I think growth is the goal for any business, right? So even as a business owner, if you're a business owner on this call listening in, understand that these laws were made for you. You must know what they are, right? So like what we said, please research on the industry, understand what's obtainable there, so that you are not putting yourself under situations where you are being caught unawares. A lot of people are not aware. Let me just go very basic a bit before I end this. A lot of business owners are not aware of the benefits they have under the Finance Act, where they don't have to necessarily start paying company income tax if they've not hit a certain threshold of 25 million naira in a gross financial period. Some businesses do not know that they have to file their value added tax returns the 21st of every single month. Some businesses are not aware of the need to file their annual returns. Some businesses do not understand what it takes for you to say that you are raising funding and how that process actually works. It's not just by having a business plan and going to give an investor. There's so much that goes into the fundraising process, right? Like valuation, having a cap table, trying to understand what your investors are coming in with, being able to negotiate your term sheet and all that. So there's just so much that you need to understand as a lawyer, as a business owner, as a startup, and compliance cannot be pushed under the carpet, right? I think for me, those are my words. We have some very, very interesting comments still coming in, but let's try to take part this up. We have 5 minutes to go. What would you say for you would be your final words if you were going to say something else? Just share with us your final thoughts. You've done amazingly. I know that there are so many aspects that we didn't really do a deep dive. We don't have all the time. Please, if you need to go deeper, enter always inbox and bombard him with questions and messages. I'm sure he will be so excited to answer you. And for me as well, my platform, I'm on LinkedIn. I literally just go through my posts to be able to reach out to me. I don't think we have to do so much to get across. But I want to thank every single person for actually being like, this is really interesting to see a lot of conversations going on in this space. And I love Yinka's comment. I see Charles Elijah. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And I see that right now, I don't know if it's on LinkedIn, I see on LinkedIn about 17 people, and that has been increasing. On YouTube, we also have viewers. So I want to just thank you guys for being here. This is really an amazing time. This is my own final comment, so that I don't talk too much. But over to you, Orin, before I round up finally.
Okay, so thank you so much. First, thank you so much, Rosemont, for this platform. I'm sure that there's going to be this conversation is going to keep is an ongoing one, right? Thank you so much for inviting me. I still don't know why you did, but thank you anyways. Yeah, that said, I think that again, 2023 is going to have a lot of interesting dynamics. Many things are going to be we are going to be experiencing a lot of shakeups in the industry. I think that there's still a lot of layoffs coming. That's a fact. You don't need to be a prophet to know that. There's still a lot of layoffs coming. There's a lot of salary reduction coming. If you are looking to change your job in 2023, I have a piece of advice for you. I think you need to, if you are looking to change your job or you're looking to get a job, I think that the due diligence has to be both ways, right? You need to ask relevant questions. This is not the time for you to, especially if it is a senior role. This is not the time for you to just ask them, "Oh, you have a good work environment. How much are you going to pay me?" This is not good, right? But you need to ask questions about, how well the company is doing. Of course, to the extent that they can disclose to you. But maybe also we also need to start rethinking how we the terms of the employment contract, so that if you are laid off, they can, because I have a friend who experienced something. He was employed, and before he resumed, they withdrew the offer. I think on the day he was supposed to resume, they withdrew the offer. I anticipate that a lot of such things will be happening in 2023. So please, I pray that all of us here and our well wishers will not be affected. That said, I also think that there are a lot of opportunities that will be opening up in 2023, with the many problems coming. Where there are problems, there are opportunities, right? That's the way to see problems. So, with the many problems that we foresee will happen in 2023, there are a lot of people who are going to make a lot of money, right? If you've seen, if I keep going back to 08, 09 financial crisis, I mean, it is one of the most interesting piece of the history, financial history, economic history I've done in my time, right? And the interesting thing about it is that people who short the mortgage stocks at the time, they actually made a lot of money, right? Like people who took a bet against it, made a lot of money at the time. So don't bet against the system. I'm not saying bet that everything will crash. I'm saying that just know that there are some things that will happen. Be wise enough to open your eyes to them, right, and prepare yourself to exploit the opportunities that will come from those challenges that we have in 2023. Thank you so much, Rosemont, for this. I have had such an amazing
Awesome.
time. I look forward to listening in on subsequent conversations.
Awesome, 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 awesome. I love it. Thank you so much. And for everyone who joined this particular session, just send me a message in my inbox. There is a research by Forbes and Tech About that I'll be sharing with you. I think everyone who actually registered for this webinar, I'll be sending some of these data insights to you so that it can actually help you to navigate your way. And you have a lot of them talking about some innovations for 2023. And one of the basic things that even I think Forbes even talked about was the fact that there's going to be longer, better periods. So yeah, startups are not going to be building in secret anymore, right? People would love to grow with their customers, grow with their clients, innovate. That's what ChatGPT basically is doing. They're innovating with us, they're growing with us. So I see a lot of startups being able to do that. Let me not start this conversation all over again. I need to stop now. So thank you so much. This is 8:30. I've kept you guys for an hour plus, and I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Catch us on our next series. This is recorded, so you can always go back. Please share with somebody. Let them know that there's something happening. And please, everybody, appreciate when you're in the comment box. Maybe I will send you this plaque and this juice after this conversation. But thank you so much for being a part of this. We are definitely going to do great work together. And like I said, collaboration is the new competition, guys. Reach out to somebody you know that is doing fantastic in your space. Put something together, do a project together, volunteer together, and make magic together. I wish you the best of 2023. I'm looking forward to seeing growth, massive exploits in your respective work, jobs, industries, and beyond. So for now, I'll be saying goodbye, everyone. Thank you, and it's such an honor having you here. Thank you so much for being a part of this, and well done. Bye, guys. Bye, Maureen. Take care of yourself. Bye.